Hey, welcome to the Healthcare Nation podcast. Your host, Rick Gannotta, with our producer, Joe Woolworth. Joe, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great today. Doing great.
Listen, I want to just say to the audience, we've had a lot of feedback on our lack of engagement on the Biden-Trump debate, specifically talking about the cognitive issues that were called into question. I just want to tell our viewers and our audience that are listening on the podcast platforms that we're going to do a whole show dedicated to that. And that's coming up, right, Joe? I think our next show. So stay tuned for that. But today we've got a great show. You know, and for those of you who are frequent listeners and subscribers, and we appreciate that, you know that we get into the market sometimes, specifically with trends and innovations in the health sector. And one of the areas that have been on our radar for a while has been the cannabis industry, the gummy industry, what's happening with respect to regulation, research and development, and just the overall, I think, states' rules and regs along those lines. And as Joe and I kicked this around, we said, let's do a show dedicated to one of the leading, I think, areas of growth, which is the gummy industry, and have a CEO in that space. So, Joe, you want to add anything to that as we...
Yeah, I think I do have an interesting story, I think, to add. For me, this is a funny story, actually happened, and this might be like a lot of people's stories. You go into like a vape store or somewhere, and you're not familiar with the whole industry, and it's like wall to wall, like bongs and stuff I don't understand about whatever. And I'm like, oh, I've heard gummies are nice, because it's coming up all the time in podcasts and whatever. And I went in to go get one, had no idea what I was doing, got terrible advice. And then leaving, some guy in a minivan pulled up behind me and asked to sell me real weed. And I was thinking to myself, I'm a grown up. I don't want your windowless van real weed with no idea what's in it. And I think that that's the conversation is people, what's a mature view or a grown up way that you care what you put in your body? That's not just about like, the $3 thing at the gas station that's called like to the moon or something,
Right. Which is very dangerous, obviously, physiologically. Mental issues that can come out of a bad experience. I mean, there's lots of negatives on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I do think, again, anyone who's on the leading edge from a regulatory perspective, on a research and development, on what goes into the constituent parts, it gets my attention. The other side, and we know this, when you're talking a market cap of $8 billion by 2030, there's something that's out there that's happening when you tie that to novel ideas. The impact factor overall makes for something that we needed to talk about. So along those lines and sticking with the health and wellness theme, we know that gummies are increasingly being formulated differently. We know legalization and regulations changing across the 50 states. There's consumer preferences. So all that said, we have Martin Andelman, the CEO of Deltrium, who's going to be on the show. And Deltrium is what I would say probably the leading gummy producer in this space. When you think about Delta 9, Delta 8, the THC side, he has a novel approach, leveraging research, development, his own double-blind studies that he did, looking at the legal and regulatory issues, the impact factor, and really positioning his product in the market so that it is certainly a positive ad versus a negative from a market uptake. And he's doing it in a way that is sensible, working within the bounds so that he protects people. One of the things specifically, Joe, is that Martin insisted that on their website, you got to go through age verification for 21. So I thought that was really laudable, and I commend them for that.
I also thought it was interesting during the interview, the idea of building brand loyalty. He brought up, and I hadn't thought about it. Like if you go and you buy a gummy and you just go the next time, you don't care which one you bought. And there's a lot that goes into brand loyalty. Like you've got to know what you're talking about. You've got to trust the brand. And I think that that's a really interesting approach for trying to capture a market where brand loyalty wasn't a thing before, because people, honestly, there's a lot of garbage out there.
Yeah. And his creation of brand loyalty through social media and this relationship that he's having with his customers, I think, which is also very unique.
Yeah.
So with that, let's invite Martin Andelman on the show.
Welcome to the Healthcare Nation podcast. We're committed to bringing you thought leaders in the field to discuss what's new and noteworthy in the healthcare sector. Now your host, Rick Gannotta.
Martin, so great to have you on the show. Joe, our producer, and I have been talking about innovations, market trends, and everything associated with what's happening in the cannabis and gummy industry really checks the mark on that. So delighted to have you, my friend. Let me just jump right in. You're the CEO of Deltrium. I would say a leading gummy producer in the United States with I think with respect to quality control and research and development, probably on the leading edge there. Before we get into questions, tell us about yourself, Martin, a little bit about your background and how you got to Deltrium.
How did I start? We start making
Just
gummies.
start.
Well, my background really, I mean, I'm kind of an old guy now. I'm 63 years old. So my background is a long thing, but I started out in healthcare consulting, and I was a writer and a strategist, similar to some of the things that you've done. We've worked with some of the same people, I'm sure, over the years. And after healthcare, I kind of I owned a consulting firm, and then I was with JP Morgan for a number of years, and we switched sort of from healthcare to finance, insurance side of things. And so I've really, my whole career has been spent making complicated subjects easier for people to understand. And then people say I'm funny. I don't try to make it interesting and entertaining. So that's kind of where I spent my whole career. Now, when it came to cannabis, that wasn't even really part of a career thing, but I lived in California. And so California legalized cannabis first for medical, I think back in about 2012, and then recreationally in 2016. And, to be honest, I wasn't sure I was even, I looking back, it's funny to think, but I wasn't 100% sure they should legalize it. I was like a little bit concerned. I was thinking, you're going to legalize it. All of a sudden there's going to be billboards on the 405 freeway for marijuana or something. And, you have, is that really a good thing? I wasn't sure how it would go. I didn't know if you legalize it, people said, well, if you legalize it, more people will do it. And I thought, is that really true? I mean, it didn't seem like it at the time, because I have never met anyone in my entire life that said, I'd like to smoke cannabis, but it's illegal, so I don't. Ever. I've never met anybody like. So I thought, how much growth really will there be there? Well, now we've gotten to see, right? We have 37 states where cannabis is basically legal. 22 of those completely legal recreationally, and more every day. And now finally, the federal government is changing, their stance. So obviously its time has come.
Yeah, I was looking, and we mentioned it in the intro. It's about an $8 billion projected market cap by 2033.
Yeah.
So clearly a space where there's a lot of movement, a lot of opportunity across the board. There's no doubt. And your background, by the way, in healthcare, which I can obviously relate to, but also the health and wellness side and your experience at JP Morgan with risk kind of all goes together to probably get you where you are right now. And along those lines, let's talk about the innovative component to this, because I think you've taken a tack that's a little different from others in
No
the industry.
question.
So tell us, unpack that a little bit for us, Martin.
First of all, I think what Deltrium's doing is the future of gummies. It's not just Deltrium. I mean, I think this is where it's going. What happened here was in 2018, we had a bill pass called the Farm Bill of 2018. And it was backed by Mitch McConnell, of all things. And it passed, and I ignored it because it didn't sound like anything I would be interested in. I mean, the Farm Bill, right? Well, it made hemp legal. And I ignored that too, because I always was taught that hemp you made rope out of, and
It's different than
cannabis
THC,
was something you smoked and it had THC in it, but hemp didn't, and whatever. I don't know. So I ignored it again. But what happened there was very important. It made it legal for science to research the plant. I didn't know it was illegal to research a plant. I mean, I would have thought, if you would have asked me, is it legal to research heroin at a research facility? I would have said, yeah, I would think so, but it's not, right? These things are class 1 drugs, controlled substances, and you can't research them. So when they passed the bill, it gave a definition for hemp. It said, if cannabis has less than 0.3% THC by dry weight, if it has less than that, then it's legal in
and I
50
think
states.
this is a really important point. Folks were not exploring the opportunities to, whether it's on the commercialization side or the scientific side, because of the legalities associated and the restrictions associated with the research side.
Right.
Until the Farm Bill.
Until the Farm Bill. And then immediately researchers around the country started taking apart the plant. And they discovered, I think it's about 109 or 110 different cannabinoids inside that plant that naturally occur in the plant. Now, the only one we were ever familiar with was THC. That's all we knew, right? THC is the short version of the word. It's really delta-9 THC tetrahydrocannabinol. That's the only thing we ever knew about. Now we find out, well, there's actually 110 different cannabinoids in that plant. There's CBD, we've heard of that now, CBG, there's HHC, there's THCV, there's CBN, there's a number of different, and then there's things like THCO and THCP, which are very strong and will soon, I think, be illegal. But the point is, there are a number of different cannabinoids. And by blending them differently, by creating blends, it's what science has called the entourage effect. So if I put a little bit of delta-9, a little bit of delta-8 with a little bit of CBN and a little bit of lemon, like if I blend these cannabinoids together, I can get a very specific targeted effect. So as we started to build this company, and look, Deltrium, we took 2 years at Deltrium to everything we've done here to really make sure it was right. And so we've created products with a purpose. It's not just about, oh, I want THC because I want to get high. Like, that's really kind of a limited way of looking at this, right?
Yeah, and I want to get into the precision part of it because that's really important. But getting back, when you think about the CBD side, and just from the medicinal wellness side, that space has blown up.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Just from, I would say, an application for arthritic conditions, joint pain, etc. Tremendous, I think, uptake in the market, but also some positives in the research literature as well. But let me stay on that because I want to get back to the quality and safety standards, what really goes into the development of all this. There's a lot of gummies that are out there. Folks have stories about someone they knew, they took too much, they took too little, it did nothing, whatever. What are they using it for? Tell us about your process at Deltrium, what you're doing on the quality and safety side specifically.
Yeah.
And I want to get a little bit granular on this because you also said you blend. And I think that opportunity also creates a level of fidelity that the usual gummy company is not going to deploy.
That's right. And not nearly enough do. And I think more will all the time, but not nearly enough do yet. I mean, the reality is, and I want to be careful about this. We've talked about healthcare and medical. There's like medical claim,
Right.
And I want to be very careful about this. But I brought an article that I just wanted to just throw out there. The headline to this was a couple of days ago, and it said, older patients using medical cannabis experience considerable improvement in health and well-being. Federal study finds. Now, is that enough for doctors? No, probably not. Doctors are going to go, well, I'm going to need another study, and I'm going to need this, and I'm going to check that, and we're going to I get it. But for the rest of us, and I mean maybe 70, 80% of the people in the country, I mean, for everybody else, I'm not going to make a medical claim. For instance, we have a blend called Deum, right? It is engineered and designed just to put you to sleep gently, keep you asleep through the night, and wake up without any grogginess. That's what it does. Okay, that's it. That's the only reason to buy that. Okay.
You would not take this in the morning before a board meeting.
Exactly. And we have another blend, Energized. And, I had told somebody once, don't take it at dinner time, which he promptly took it at dinner time. And he was up till 4 a.m. Now, he said on the positive side, he finished a week's worth of work in one night. So, but there's a blend of cannabinoids that actually gives you an incredible amount of energy for 4 or 5 hours without caffeine, without any of that jittery feeling, right? So depending on how you blend those cannabinoids, you can get a very specific targeted effect. Now, I would tell you that sleeping through the night, sleeping better makes you healthier. Is that a medical claim? Is the FDA coming after me? I think it's a common sense thing, right? Like people know, there are people that like to have a glass of wine in the evening, right? and they'll say, why it relaxes me. And I feel better because of that. Now, I don't know. Is there a medical study saying exactly that this is contributing to that? I don't know. But I know having a glass of wine relaxes me.
Right.
So, and I think that improves overall well-being.
And sure, I'm with you 100%. And we say it so often. We're not making claims here. We're really, looking at the discovery process and seeking to understand a lot. And in that sense, what's really interesting to me is you've taken apart the constituent components and reconfigured them with other, additives to make these blended effects. So what got you to that point?
Yeah,
Why did you do that, number one? And how did you know which, constituent components of the Delta 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 were the ones that were going to work?
Well, yeah. I mean, we brought together a group of experts, right? We got input from a lot of different biochemistry side of things. There are people that are expert in cannabis blending and in distilling the cannabis and in creating that. There's a lot of interim steps, right? So we literally we wanted to build what we built. We really built for us, right? We were kind of building it for us. So as we were looking at all the different blends and we were making samples of different ones and we were giving them to people to try and we were getting input back and we were going back and forth and looking at everything. As that process went on, neither my partner nor I ever asked anybody that we were talking to on the phone how much something would cost. Now, I know that sounds crazy.
Yeah, we're going to get to the market cap questions at the end.
Well,
but
I know it sounds crazy, but it's what happened. Now, well, Martin, why didn't you ask how, someone said, well, we should add THCV. And I went, why and what? And said, yes. I didn't go, well, how much will that be?
Mm-hmm.
It's not because I don't care about what anything costs. It's simply that, I don't know, in my mind, I was building a gummy. How much could it be? I just didn't think of it in those terms, right? At the end of the day, I'm building a gummy. I'm not buying a Ferrari. How much could this cost? When we got it all done and we took it out to the market, I got a call one evening. Somebody said, Martin, your Joyful blend is probably the most expensive gummy ever made. Why did you do that? I mean, it's got like 7 or 8 ingredients. If you go to any store where you are, you'll see, you'll see some gummies. Maybe there'll be 2 ingredients. Maybe one has 3. Nobody has 4, 5, 6, 7. Why would you put all that in a gummy? Well, it's a mood elevator, and Joyful's amazing. I mean, Joyful's something that you could take in the morning and have just a great day, right? I mean, Energize you can take in the morning and still do math. I mean, that's why I say products with a purpose. We went about this differently. It's not just about, oh, I want to get high, and so I'm going to take THC. I mean, that's what we grew up with. That was really a rudimentary understanding of this.
And that's what's so fascinating here is the precision. We talk a lot about precision medicine, obviously, on the show, and what a difference that's made in therapeutics. But when you look at this segment in the health and wellness area, I mean, was this an incidental finding that you did, some external thing, or did you design for it specifically?
No, we designed specifically for it. We started in a place and we said, look, what are the most common things that people are looking for? People need help with sleep. I mean, anybody my age knows this. If you're listening to this podcast and you're over 50, I mean, you don't sleep as well, or you travel. And have you ever flown to Asia? And what happens when you go to the doctor? You go, I've got a 17-hour flight. First thing, well, try Ambien. Have you ever taken an Ambien?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I'm not a big fan of Ambien.
Yeah, it's a headache in a bottle. I mean, it's a guaranteed headache. If you take Ambien on your flight over there, you need 2 days before your first meeting. It's just awful. Well, then you go back to the doctor on the next trip. Should I try melatonin? I'll try, melatonin. Mm-hmm. And then I'll try Xanax. And then they'll give me a Valium. And then, whatever. I mean, my wife's dentist, my wife hates going to the dentist. My wife's dentist gives her 2 blue Valium to go to the dentist. I mean, these things are narcotics. They're opioids. I don't want to take that.
Right.
I mean, people talk about, so that's just sleep. I mean, anybody who's had pain or chronic pain knows that, Vicodin sucks. I mean, it's a horrible drug.
No, I'm with you on that. And look, we've said it here before. I've always believed the least medicine is the best medicine. And in that sense, when I think about the category here and where you're at, it really is so intriguing. But staying on the personalized kind of the intentional direction, what made you think of I'm going to go for the sleep market, although that's probably obvious with Dream. I'm going to look for something that's energetic. I'm going to look for something that's more an uplifting, like your joyful product. Was it did you just categorize it? And I'm just
Yeah,
interested in product category fit and then the commercialization
we did
side.
a lot of research, and including AI and including all the Google searching, including all the personal interviews to find out, we targeted the top 6 demand, what people were looking for, and said, now, can we create a blend of cannabinoids that gives you that exact feeling? I mean, one of my pet peeves is you'll go into a store, you'll see some gummies, and they'll have 25 milligrams of Delta 8 or something in them. And they'll say they're sleep gummies. And then they'll have one and they'll be like, sex gummies. What's in them? 25 milligrams of Delta 8. It's the same thing.
Right.
I mean, when I talk to people, by the way, about Deltrium on the phone, I literally have to say to someone, by the way, when I say we have 6 blends, no 2 have the same ingredients. It seems silly to me. Do I have to really point that out? Why would we have 6 blends if they all have the same ingredient? But people do. They just put a new label on it or something. The point is, it's not, there are different types of highs, right? People, we all understand that,
If
right?
you're even looking for a high.
Right. Well,
Going-
coffee is a high.
Yes.
Right. We don't think of it as I'm going to go get high. I'm getting a cup of coffee, right? But it is a type of high, right? We know this about alcohol, right? Think about it with alcohol. We know about alcohol because we've made mistakes with it in the past, right? So we know it's different if we're going to have a glass of wine. That's different than a martini. It's different than a shot of tequila. It's different than a beer, right? And we don't always look for the strongest alcohol. We don't walk into a bar and go, what's the strongest alcohol you got? And they go, Bacardi 151. We go, okay, that's all I want. Nobody does that. But when it comes to cannabis, I was with my wife. We were in California this a couple of years ago. I took her to a dispensary. And, she's not a cannabis person. So she was standing at the counter and she said, do you have anything not strong? And I thought to myself, said no one ever? What? Do you have anything not strong? And the guy behind the counter pulls out a vape pen that's 50-50 CBD and 50% Delta 9. And he goes, oh, yeah, here, that's not strong. And I said, why do they even make those? Like, have you ever heard anybody say, I like this. Do you have any weed that's worse? Nobody ever said that as I was growing up. Everybody was taught, oh, I want the best weed. My friend has killer weed, whatever. The reality was back then, pot wasn't very good.
Yeah.
A lot of it was crap. So you wanted the best. Today, that's very different.
Now this is,
Today it's
and I would say this is a different product category, for lack of a better way to position it. So tell me, I'm going to couch this under the educational side. You educate your potential buyer, your consumers who are out there about the differentiation of your product versus the run of the mill, because you clearly, as you said, you've got several different products. They have different intents. They're more expensive. How do you get the word out there? What has been the go-to-market with respect to educating the consumer?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of online, obviously videos and things and podcasts and so forth. We do talks with retailers, a lot of training with retailers, a lot of materials and, things that we're constantly educating on. I mean, we actually have, we actually have a glossary on our site. It's amazing. Like, most people don't even have this, but we spend a lot of time on the glossary. We spend a lot of time with people because once you understand what you're taking, then you're never going to take, gummies that you don't know what is inside them. You don't know. I mean, one of the examples about us is that we built these blends, tested them with people all along the way, and then literally decided we would double-blind lab test them, which I think made some of our partners nervous. I went, look, I'm going to take a random sample of 100,000 gummies. I'm going to divide it in half, and I'm going to send half to one lab and then half to another. And those two don't know about each other. So if they don't match, we wouldn't offer the product. But nobody does that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the COAs, a lot of the analysis isn't good. Some of it's faked. I mean, I've seen a lot of products out there where I've scanned the QR code and what they say is inside isn't inside, and we need regulation. I mean, that we absolutely we built Deltrium so that somebody could literally stand up in the Senate and go, "This is how this should be done." I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I mean, we're trying to be a model for that. Obviously, we don't put big boobs on the packaging, and we don't put kid stuff in we don't make candy canes and bubble gum I mean, our site, you have to buy something on our site, you actually have to have your age verified. I mean, we're very careful, right, about how we do this, but there's a thing about us. Take the right product for the purpose you're looking for. And then the question is, well, how much should I take? Right? I mean, so I need help with sleep. Great. How much should I take?
Right. And I want to go down. There's two things in there. By the way, I think if you become the source of truth for how it should be done, and there's elements of regulatory capture that could work in clearly your company's benefit going long range down there, particularly as the market grows. But one of the things that I'm intrigued with, and obviously you have to get consumers, potential, patrons of your site to it, but is that you have a dosing grid and an actual algorithm. You have a device that allows you to score, like we do with medication, the gummies, so that you can dose it correctly.
Right.
You cannot do that unless you have consistent product in production, right? I mean, there has to be no variability in that, which is intriguing. How did you get to that point? And Martin, again, I'm going to get this sounds very expensive. So when you position the product, how does that come together? I mean, is that part of it as well? I mean, I would say this is, we got a high-end product because we're putting this kind of resource and expertise into it so that there's no mistakes.
That's right. I mean, we're meticulous about this. I mean, we literally, like I said, we were building something for us. And so, we weren't willing to take any chances, right? I mean, we did everything in the highest quality way, right? Whatever it was, we said yes to whatever. So literally, I mean, there really isn't another coming like it right now. But, again, what choice do you, if you're going to create a product and say it's Dream, you're going to I mean, the truth is it better work. If it's not going to work, what's the point of doing all this? I mean, how long is that scam going to last? Well, somebody bought it, didn't help them sleep there, and I'm done. I mean, right? So now contrast that with our experience. We've never had that happen. I mean, 100% of the people that took Dream went perfect. And that's just not an accident. That's 2 years of work. Now, we really looked at this very carefully because when I was talking about my wife and I being in California a couple years ago, and I've done a podcast on this that people can find on YouTube that says weed got too strong. The reality is, according to the DEA, the cannabis that they seized in 1995, when compared with the cannabis they seized in 2020, cannabis today is 20 to 80 times stronger than it was in 1995.
Incredible.
Yeah. I mean, think about those numbers, 20 times. So it has gotten too strong. And so if you're not a regular cannabis user and you just think, hey, it's a weekend away with my old friends from college and we're going to try, somebody brought some cannabis, some marijuana, we're going to smoke a joint, whatever. I wouldn't do it. I don't recommend it. It's going to be too strong. You're not going to feel good. I mean, it's just, I mean, you have no resistance built up, right?
And are you, Martin, are you seeing that? And I listen to a lot of podcasts. It amazes me the number of folks, including podcast hosts and participants who say, oh, I do gummies. I mean, we hear that a lot. It's in the public vernacular for sure. Is there a move over from traditional pot smoking to gummies? Are you seeing that? And was that part of your intentional, marketing plan?
Yeah. The reality is, we talked in the beginning of this, we said, they're making it legal. Does that mean more people are going to do it?
Right.
I mean, the reality is like I said, you reach a certain point in your life where it's like, look, I'm not trying to get stoned here. Maybe I want something to relax. Maybe I want something to help me sleep. Maybe I want something to put me in a great mood and laughing. But I'm not trying to, knock myself out here. I mean, and cannabis has gotten too strong.
Yeah.
And also people don't want to be smoking anymore. I mean, it's like, smoking is smoking. I'm not saying that I think smoking cannabis is like smoking cigarettes, but it's still smoking.
It's still smoking.
It's tar and all those things.
And many
right?
other effects too. We have to say that. But I would say that clinically, there's lots of effects that need to be considered by anyone who is smoking anything, particularly marijuana. There's no doubt about that.
Well, and a gummy, I mean, you take a gummy and it's going to last maybe 4 or 5 hours, and you're not going to have to smoke anything. And it's going to, if it gives you the effect that you're looking for, isn't that better than having to walk around smoking something?
No, I'm with you. So we established, let's just say the demand that's out there, and I am intrigued by this. When I think about the competitive advantage, we'll say that Deltrium brings to the table versus other gummies that are out there. One is the fact that you put in a lot of research to develop the product, that you have strict standards with respect to, should we say, quality control that's ongoing. You mentioned, I don't know of many companies that are probably doing double blind studies, and you've done that.
No one.
That's pretty impressive to me. We said probably that's an expensive endeavor. It's a private company. Where do you see the company going? Where is it at right now? And, we said earlier, it's probably going to be an $8 billion opportunity in
the industry.
2030.
Yeah.
So give us your playbook.
I think ultimately, Deltrium will get acquired by a bigger, this isn't a mystery anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've heard all this about the federal government rescheduling or descheduling cannabis, because up until now, it's been a Schedule I drug, which we've all probably heard the soundbite, it's on the same list with fentanyl and heroin. And that's just embarrassing for the government. I mean, you reach a certain point where you go, okay, wait, I don't know what your opinion is on marijuana, but it's not fentanyl or heroin, right? So that's changing. States are changing. Everything is changing. And I think that Deltrium will, first of all, be the first brand that enjoys real brand loyalty, because right now in the marketplace, nobody buys the same gummies twice. They might go and buy gummies, and then they take them, they're like them, they don't. They took too much, they don't like it. They took too little, they don't like it. Right? But the ones in the middle, maybe they buy them, whatever. But they go back next week. They don't care what brand of gummies they bought. Right? Now, Deltrium, we go out of our way to really create a product you can't get anywhere else and tell you exactly how much to take. So it works. So you come back, and now you don't want anything but that. That's why we say Deltrium, only Deltrium. I mean, if there's not another dream out there. So once it works for you, I think we're going to see that kind of level of brand loyalty that really doesn't exist in the cannabis market. I mean, let's face it. People go to a dispensary, they buy cannabis, or they buy vapes, or they buy gummies. They come back 3 weeks later, they don't even know the brand they bought. There's not a lot of loyalty there.
And this experience that you're establishing with your customer base, because you want them to go on the website, you want them to use the dosing algorithm to see what works for them, and then you provide a scoring mechanism tool so that they can.
Better.
Right? That no one does that.
No,
right?
no. Look, we spent a year on dosing and the algorithm. There are a lot of factors that go into how much should you take of this gummy. And then we'll get to when you're saying they're expensive. Like, it depends how you look at it.
And I'm not saying that, by the way, I'm not saying that in a negative way. I mean, I think a price point is price point.
It's certainly not the cheapest, but at the same time, our gummies are significantly stronger. They're 1-inch gummies, and they're divided into 4s, right? So anyway, we looked at the dosing thing very carefully. We talked to scientists that are working on Delta-9 THC dosing guidelines, and then we looked at it in a holistic kind of way. Some of it is physiological, right? How big a person are you, right? You're 6'4" and you weigh 300 pounds. Well, that's different than 5'2", weighs 90 pounds. That's body mass is kind of an obvious thing, right? But there are other things that are not physiological. There are things that are psychological. There are things that are environmental, lifestyle, right? Age, demographic sort of thing. So we built those factors into a 14-question algorithm. And you go on the site, you click Find My Dose, and you answer those 14 questions about you, just about you. And at the end of submitting those questions, in a few seconds, the algorithm will tell you a certain color bar that you are. Maybe you're orange, right? And then on the back of every Deltrium product, whether the box or the jar or whatever it is, you'll find a color chart on the back. And all you have to do is find the orange bar where it'll say to maybe take half a gummy, right? So if you were blue, it would say take 3/4 of a gummy. If you were purple, it might say take 1/4 of a gummy, right? But it tells you exactly, based on your answers about you, what your optimal initial dose should be. Trust the algorithm.
Right.
I have friends that literally call and they go, I don't really have to do that, do I? I'm like, yeah, you really do. And an example is a friend of mine in Oregon who had just gotten his gummies, and he called because, we're older. We've been around. Like, do I really need to take the algorithm? Come on, it's me. I'm cool. I know. I'm figuring. Yeah, whatever. I went, yeah, you really do. He's like, well, why? I'm like, what? He goes, my wife and I we were going to each take one. And I went, no, that's probably the worst strategy I've ever heard.
It's bad analogy, but I see this as a responsible approach. You wouldn't want to say, hey, I'm starting out with 2 shots in my vodka martini versus, 1.
Right.
Crazy, right?
Have you ever taken too much of an edible, a THC edible? If people listening to this podcast, have you ever taken too much of a THC edible? It's not a good experience. It's a horrible thing because it probably lasts 4 or 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I did it once and I went to bed right away. I went, I just got to go to sleep. This is awful. Like, that's a terrible thing, terrible experience. The other terrible experience is you get those people that are familiar with cannabis,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're familiar with smoking cannabis, whatever. And then they don't take enough and then they don't feel anything. And they go, that stuff's not, yeah. And they go back to whatever they were doing. The other people go, oh no, that's not for me. That was too crazy. I don't want to do that. So we realized, look, it's one thing to develop. Now here's what really happened. I said this couple, yes, you both have to take the algorithm. He turned up blue, which is in the higher end of the scale, and she came out purple. Now, they were both going to each take 1 gummy, right? Had they not used the algorithm, he would have taken half a gummy too little, not felt it, and gone, yeah, they were okay. I didn't really feel that. And she would have taken 3/4 of a gummy too much and probably not done it again. Probably gone, oh, honey, I don't really like that. I'm going to have a glass of wine.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. It just made me feel uncomfortable.
2 very different experiences, lack of that consistency and the dangers of the variability. So,
But look what happened. They used the algorithm. They got the right dose.
Right.
Now they love it. It's as simple as that. Then we said, how do you get 3/4 of a gummy? I mean, how are you going to do this exactly? You're going to get a knife and you're going to try to make a quarter. I mean, so we literally invented the world's first and only gummy cutter. Now, you've been in healthcare. You know pill cutters.
Yeah,
There's lots of pill cutters.
The scoring mechanism that we alluded to earlier, right?
Yeah, there are lots of pill cutters out there. There are no gummy cutters.
Right.
And so we were actually able to get patent protection on the design, and we're still working on the utility patent. But it is a patented gummy cutter. It is not just a simple piece of plastic. We hired an industrial designer. We had it manufactured in China, but we designed it here, and the plastic, the type of plastic used and the sharpness of it make it just effortless to cut a gummy into quarters. So if it says, well, you should take 3/4 of a gummy, you don't have to guess at it.
You're going to get the exact dose.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you want to know how the whole industry, I mean, we traveled around the country and I went to hundreds of stores over a couple of years. And this is how the whole industry does it. You prove this to yourself tomorrow. You just walk in anywhere. Well, how much should I take? And they go, well, everybody's different. Well, thank God you told me that. I thought everybody was going to be the same. No. Okay. So everybody's different. So just take a little bit and then wait I don't know, 45 minutes or something. And if you're not feeling it, then take a little more. And then I guess you wait, a little and see if you're feeling it. And then you take a little more. I mean, beside the fact, that's like the worst advice I've ever heard, because here's first of all, it leads to people taking too much because, if you take half and then you go, has it been 45 minutes? It feels like 45 minutes. I feel okay. How about you? I'm fine too. Oh, let's take another one. And now you may have a problem, right? So it's just a bad, on the other side of the coin, think about that. Like, well, I took some, I waited 45 minutes. I took it, now it's been an hour and a half. I can't even remember why I took one. I mean, now I'm on to something else. I'm not paying attention anymore. So it's just silly advice. They should just say, when somebody says, well, how much should I take? They should go, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
No,
I
look,
don't know anything
again,
about it.
I think that when I look at not the pharmaceutical industry, but when I look at recreational, let's just say alcohol, what's happened in the gummy industry so far, the lack of regulation, you really are on the cutting edge here, establishing the rules of the game, for lack of a better way to put it. I'm really intrigued by this. And let me step back a little bit and just kind of aggregate it together and look at the opportunity. So you knew there was incredible demand. You have a differentiated product that's going to talk to a lot of folks' individual needs, right? Everything from sleep to energetics, et cetera. I know the cutter that you use, the scoring tool, is proprietary. Are the blends proprietary, Martin,
Well,
that you're
you
putting
can't.
together?
Yeah, I mean, you can't. Anybody can reverse engineer anything, right? So, and I hope they do. I mean, I hope that other gummy companies get better. A lot of these things are, I don't know, they're a little bit. I'm not sure they'll be around.
Yeah.
Like if all you're trying to do is sell Delta 8 and a gummy in a bag, I don't know that those will be around that much longer.
Right.
I think there are some big cannabis companies, some big legitimate, cannabis companies and pharmaceutical companies that are going to be looking at a company like Deltrium because of the brand loyalty aspect. That people are rebuying it all the time. I mean, think about this for a minute. When you go to our site, right, it says, "Are you 21 or over?" and you click yes, right? And then, there's no regulation that says we have to do this, but we decided that before somebody could purchase something, we would have to pay for and have a third-party age verification service. So when you go to buy something on the site, it's going to go, well, you're going to have to answer these questions. You may have to upload a driver's license. If they can't verify you on the internet another way, they're going to say you have to upload. Now, people in the industry have called me and went, "What are you, out of your mind? I mean, don't do that. That just makes it, harder for people to purchase, right?" And so we're adding a little message to the site right there where it's going to say, "Look, I know I'd like to check out as a guest too, but we can't risk this getting into the hands of kids. And if you don't support that, then shop somewhere else." Now, did anyone have to tell us to do that? Like, does anyone think that asking someone if they're over 21 and clicking a button is age verification of anything? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And
That's not what bartenders do. "Hey, you over 21? Yes." Well, then have a martini by all means. I don't know. Do we need to be, if you're a responsible company, do you need to be regulated to be told that? Is that a mystery to anybody?
and
It's ridiculous.
I see this as a competitive advantage for Deltrium across the board. There is no doubt about it. If folks are telling you the opposite, that it is keeping customers away, I actually think that level of integrity, it goes a long way. I wanted to ask you one question. There seems to me, and this is just an observation, that there's a move away from alcohol consumption, particularly with the younger folks.
Yeah.
But marijuana and gummies fall into a different category. I think it's really the bad effects, the physiologic effects, the negative long-term effects of alcohol that's probably influencing a lot of that for that age cohort. What are your thoughts on that, and how does that relate back to what you did and are doing with Deltrium?
Well, and we haven't started. I mean, we are planning to do some drinkables, right? To take our algorithm and our formula. I mean, there are companies out there that are making THC-based drinks.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Maryland now, I guess, the first state with lounges. So, but there are several out there, and I've been in, people have introduced me to them, and I asked the same thing. I said, "Well, do you want to try it?" And I'm like, "Oh, how much? How much is in there, and what am I trying exactly?" I mean, he's like, "Well, there's 50 milligrams." I'm like, "In the bottle or in the shot or what? How much are you suggesting I take?" Right? "Well, why don't you just try half a shot then?"
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wait, do you have any idea how much I should take?
Same issue, right?
Yeah, same issue every time. And I said no, because I don't know how much. No, that's a ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like we say we're gummies for grown-ups at Deltrium. I'm a grown-up. I'm not, I'm not taking some mystery cocktail. I don't know what's in it. That sounds crazy to me. So when we attack the drinkable side of things, it'll be exactly like the gummies. We will have, our drinkable will come with a glass. The glass will have color-coded bars on it. It'll go, if you're orange, fill it up to here. If you're purple, to there. I mean, if we can't do that, if we can't tell you exactly how much to take for a targeted effect, we won't offer it. So, because that's without that, it's a crapshoot.
Okay, so you gave us a little insight on where you're going, perhaps with the drinkable
Drinkables.
side. Tell us right now, where can folks find Deltrium? Where do they go? The website, and again, I was amazed when I saw the depth and breadth of product. And I don't want to say it's certainly not from a consumer perspective, something I've seen before in the wellness space. It is very consumer centric when it comes to, I want this or this. It crosswalks nicely. Where can folks find you? What stores are you at? What states?
I mean, Deltrium.com obviously is the website that anybody can go to anytime. We have a big, we're neighborhood pharmacies and sort of hemp dispensaries or cannabis dispensaries. We're very careful about the retailers that we work with. It's things like like we're not in one of these vape stores with 8,000 products and nobody knows what anything is. Like we're not, it's just too much risk. Our product needs a consultative approach, right? I mean, it's not, people aren't just going to walk in and say, yeah, I mean, 3 of those and I'm leaving. We need people to use the algorithm. We need people, if you're not going to tell them about the algorithm and give them the cutter is free, by the way, with our, if you're not going to do that, then the chances are they're going to screw it up. Because, I mean, think about it. What are the odds? Somebody hands you a gummy and you have no other guidelines. Well, chances are you're either going to take too much or too little, because taking the exact right amount would be sort of luck, So, and then once you take the wrong amount, that's not a good thing to do.
So short answer, go to the website.
And then we're going to be in neighborhood pharmacies around, we'll be in, as of right now, I think there's 2 states, Idaho and Nebraska, where we, can't ship to or something. I really imagine that, I mean, our gummies are legal in 50 states. That's just a matter of federal law.
Right.
Now, if an individual state freaks out and says, oh, no, we can't have something here, we keep track of that. We monitor it. We have on our site. We pay attention. But I think very soon, I mean, let's face it, some of it is age, right? Look, I mean, we're 63 years old, right? I mean, that's not that old anymore.
I would consider that very young.
And you see what I mean? Well, think about how different things are. My grandmother, I remember in 1970, my grandmother turned 70 in 1970. She passed away when she was 95. When she passed away, when she was 70, she didn't look a day over 95. I mean, she looked like when she died at 95, she looked the same as she did when she was 70. She looked 100 years old for the whole last 30 years of her life, right? Now, 70 is nothing. There's people climbing Mount Everest. I'm playing pickleball the other side. 70 is nothing. Well, if you go back, I mean, anybody 70 today grew up with cannabis around. I mean, hate to tell everybody, like high schools had plenty of cannabis in the 70s, 60s. It was everywhere.
No, and I think you're meeting the market nicely. So listen, really closing thoughts, Martin. I'm really interested on the topics that I think our audience always has an ear for, and that is what's novel, what's new and exciting, particularly in the health and wellness space. This fits. But as an entrepreneur, as someone who has a background in healthcare, you're a health sector consultant, have done a lot of things, obviously, in your previous life and another career. What is your advice for the entrepreneurs and your experience with Deltrium, which I would say there's a lot of barriers to entry here. That hasn't dissuaded you?
No.
Close it for us.
I mean, what we did here was it was a passionate thing. When we started, my partner and I started on this, we were looking at the medical marijuana space. My first wife and I had fought breast cancer for a number of years. And I was so I've been very familiar with chemotherapy and, not being able to eat and that whole thing, that's why nobody really beats me in a debate about medical marijuana. I'm like, I'm the guy you don't want to debate. If you're going to have a debate on this topic, not with me, because there's no question about it, right? They prescribe cancer patients an unbelievable amount of drugs, right? So to think, oh no, not THC, not cannabis. For why? They'll give them fentanyl. What are you talking about? I mean, so it's, we started out as really a passionate thing. We wanted to build them for us. As we learned more and did more, we were like, wow, let's do this, let's make this better. And the whole thing was, once we realized that we really could get very specific with targeting, one of our customers we have happens to be a retired physician. He just had a hip replacement. We saw him the other day and he took Soothe, our Soothe blend for pain. There's a lot more. You were asking me, how do we educate people? There's a lot of curiosity about this, right? You come back to it. The fastest growing audience for cannabis is over 65 because we grew up with it, and then they come back to it. Well, this is a way you can use cannabis for different purposes safely, know how much to take, know what effect you're expecting. Otherwise, how do you know if it works if you don't know why you bought it? Right? And we do have a blend called Soaring, and Soaring is intended to be intoxicating. And, we use the best ingredients in that, and it is fun. If you take the right amount, it will be fun. If you take too much, it won't. It's the same old thing. But we also have new things coming out. We have 2 travel solutions coming out that are, one's called the Overnighter and the other's called the Extended Stay. And it's a way to take gummies on your vacation with the cutter or without, that doesn't leak, in your purse or in your pocket. The drinkables will be coming. We have Pinnacle blends coming out we only did them because we could. We wanted to show off to the cannabis. Like, they're legal and they're the strongest gummies on the planet. There are a lot of ways to blend cannabinoids that people haven't looked at yet. There's a lot of research out there now. It's coming out in credible science journals. It's coming soon to a theater near you. It's good. So we try to tell people, look, try it. You're having trouble sleeping, try Dream. You want to try something intoxicating, try Soaring. We give away samples all the time. We have, these sample things, we just constantly are giving them away. And the response has been amazing.
I'm waiting to see a celebrity blend come out soon, because I think it's just a matter of time, just like everyone's getting on the bandwagon for their own customized tequilas, that when they get it, they'll be going down this road.
That's right.
Martin, this has been a fascinating conversation. I think, again, we're always looking at trends and innovations. You are way ahead of the game on what's happening. Obviously, your ideas of how to position in the market, what you've done, which really impresses me on not only the educational side, but the quality, safety, and the R&D side. I applaud you again for that, because there's not enough of that when there's no need to do it for a regulatory component. And also the age verification. That means a lot. So great to have you on, my friend.
Thank you.
We'll see you again.
Great to be here.
Best of luck with Deltrium.
Thanks.
The opinions expressed by the host and guests are for informational purposes only and not associated with any companies or academic institutions. Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel, Healthcare Nation Podcast. And if you have any questions or want to contact us, please reach out to healthcarenationpodcast.com.